My guest this week is Todd Brashear. A resident of Louisville, Kentucky, Todd is a musician who has played and recorded with artists such as King Kong, Solution Unknown, Rude Weirdo, and on multitudes of projects with Will Oldham, including Bonnie Prince Billy, Palace Brothers, and Palace Songs. Todd was also part of the iconic Bangs Slint and wrote and played on their masterpiece, Spiderland, considered by many one of the greatest albums of the American underground, influencing everyone from Mogwai to Godspeed You Black Emperor. Todd also started Wild and Woolly Video, a legendary cult video store that was open from 1997 to 2015, before transitioning into opening another independent business, Wild and Woolly Pilates, in 2017. And it gives me great pleasure to welcome the Revolutions Per Movie, Todd Brashear. Hi, Todd.
Hey, how you doing?
I'm doing good. I'm so excited to meet somebody who was a musician that also opened a video store in the 90s. I can't wait to get into that with you. But we have to ask the most important question in the world. Why is Jesus Urge Overkill the greatest album of all time?
Well, I'm not sure I'm going to say it's the greatest, but it is one of the greatest. I mean, I could talk about that for a long time, but I'll try and make it quick. I think at some point it doesn't like. I think Touch and Go asked me and other people to pick our favorite Touch and Go releases. And I believe I described it as just like a rock album from another planet. So that might be the short version. But I love how, I mean, to me, it's like an epic album. And I was talking to somebody recently I mean, I don't really have many people to talk to about this, so I'm excited to have somebody to talk to about it. He was like, man, I don't like the recordings, but that's actually what I like about it is every song. I was asking Britt from Slint about it at one point, if he remembered, like, I'm pretty sure on the album, it doesn't give credit, like who recorded it or anything.
There's no credit.
And I know some of it was recorded in Albini's basement. But other parts don't sound like that. But I actually like how every song just sounds, not every song, but a lot of the songs sound totally different. It's not just an album where every song sounds like it was recorded at the same place at the same time.
Yeah, absolutely.
But that's part of the charm of it, in my opinion. It is weird, there are songs where you can't barely hear the vocals at all. But to me, that's like part of what I like about it. Like and I'm sure I'm nostalgic about it a little bit, although there are plenty of things from that era that I never go back and listen to, and that I can put on any time, and I'm like pumping my fists, and like I get super fired up, and I'm singing along, and
yeah,
there's more to it than just nostalgia.
Yeah, it's hard to impress upon people who haven't maybe heard this record just how weird it is in terms of the sonic. It sounds like it's recorded in a long hallway in a toilet. It sounds like it's in a cave at times. There'll be like gospel vocals coming in at one point and then just kind of disappearing. Yeah. And the leads are just like, everything just jumps up at certain points. Like the song is at a certain kind of low level, and then the leads are just insanely hot.
Yeah, it'll rip your ears out depending on what volume you're listening to,
Yeah, it is sonically like a weird blanket over you in a weird way, sonically. But yeah, it's just I never really knew who did it. I'd heard that Albini was part of it, but it just sounds like everybody's kind of left to their own devices when making it.
Yeah. I don't know. It's hard to put into words. But I agree. Like, I liked their record before that. And actually, they played here. My memory is not great, just in general. Like, it's not just because I'm getting old. It just has always been like that. But they played here with Big Black at a VFW hall And I wish I could remember more about their stuff, but it was when all they had released was that first EP, and I really like that. And some of their late, like I like whatever the one was after Jesus Urge,
American Cruiser.
Americruiser. That's
Yeah,
pretty
it's great.
good, but
Yeah.
I don't know. They kind of lost me after that. It just got a little too normal or something.
No, that was the era where I was first starting to see people's names as production. Like, it's hard to explain that. Like Butch Vig, you're like, oh, he did Killdozer and he did Detroitson and he did Urge Overkill, and none of these bands sound alike. And so we went out to Smart Studios to record on those things pre Nevermind, because it was like, he just gets it, and it sounds
Yeah, yeah,
big, but it's kind of upsetting too. So
yeah, yeah. No, that was he has a good track record for
yeah.
sure.
Well, speaking of memory, you came up in the hardcore ranks as I did. What was the name of your first band?
I was actually in this band called Anti Youth, which is a pretty funny name if you really think about it.
Yeah,
Uh, it's like, do we hate young people? I think at the time the idea was we're against everything,
sure.
but it sounds like we hate youth. But I was in that band. I played bass actually, and we had songs. Like there's one song called Elders. There's a song called, like, it was very straight hardcore. Like every
Right.
song was about something that plenty of people had already had hardcore songs about. Like there's a song called F You Pigs, uh, Religion, Elders. That we only have like 4 or 5 songs, but we played shows. We only played like 2 or 3 shows, I think. But we played shows with that band, Solution Unknown. And then I joined that band. Right, there's a pattern here of me joining bands right before their first record comes out. So I joined that band right before they released their first 7 inch. And then Pajo was the drummer of that band. So, that's how I got to know him better. And then we were in Slint together. So, and I joined Slint right before their first record came out.
Well, then, how old were you when you were doing this band?
Let's see, time frames is not another one of my strong points,
It's
but
okay.
it's a miracle I get through the day sometimes, I guess. But so I believe I joined Solution Unknown like in like 1985 or 86. So I would have
Okay.
been like 16 or 17, I think.
So, how do teenagers learn to put out a 7 inch?
Mike Bakayu, he was in this band King Horse that was on Caroline Records. Glenn Danzig produced their record.
Oh, wow.
So they had some notoriety. Uh, so he was very in tune with the hardcore world, and also, I guess, like some other people I know, probably you would call it, as an adult now, I'll say he was a good networker. Like he would just call up Discord and talk to them, and like
Wow.
trade tapes with people. And uh, I don't know if I know people who used to call Glenn Danzig. I don't know if uh, but he was also in. So after, I'm jumping around here a little bit, but I have no choice. So he was also the bass player for the pre-Slint band Maurice, who maybe you've heard about or not. But some of their material was like pre-Slint material, like stuff that later went on to be, even though that band was more of like a metallic punk band, I guess you'd call it. I don't know what you'd call it. It was very metallic.
Right.
So anyway, Mike the Caillou, he was the guy who would have known like how to get a 7 inch done. And he was, I think, the goal with our LP that we did finally, like we recorded our Solution Unknown, we recorded our LP at Inner Ear.
Oh,
It
amazing.
was my senior high school spring break trip. which is a saga unto itself. But I think Mike was hoping that Discord would put it out, or like he could get
Sure.
Ian to produce it, but it all sounded pretty. I mean, if looking back, if I was Ian, I'd be like, well, these guys are cool, they can play, but it was very minor threadish, like
Sure.
it was not. If I was him, I probably wouldn't have done it. And I wouldn't have put it. I wouldn't have put it out on Discord. Nothing against that band. I mean,
Yeah.
in Louisville, depending on who you're talking to, it's an important band. But anyway, that's about Solution Unknown.
Well, what about, just, the people in Maurice were young, like 14,
Yes.
15, going on tour. Squirrel Bait, young. Was
Yeah.
that unusual in the scene? I mean, it's got to be.
I mean, well, there was even a band, Languid and Flaccid. That was a band. They were like little kids in that band. Like I think Britt was maybe 11 or something. Brian was 12. Uh, to answer your question, I'm not sure. I mean, there's plenty of bands that I know of where the people were pretty young. Like that's one thing that I guess I'm getting on a soapbox here a little bit, but like people are always like, oh, Slint, how did they do that when they were so young? Well, tons of people did stuff when they were really young. Like, I don't think Slint was that special and that. I mean, we looked really young. Maybe that's part of it. And I remember, like, maybe we looked younger than we were, but I mean, there's a metal band like Death Angel. I think they were like 14. Like,
Red Cross.
there, yeah, there are plenty of punk bands where they're little kids. I mean, I'm a dad now, so now I'm like, wow, they were little kids. But
Right.
it wasn't that crazy that we were making that music. Now, maybe people think it's like heavy music for somebody that's that young, but I don't know. To me, it's not that special that we were that young because I mean, how old were the Rolling Stones when they started? Like they were
No, it's true.
probably 20 or less.
Right.
So like
Right.
to me, I'm not comparing us to the Rolling Stones. I'm just saying like
No.
it's not as special as a lot of people make it out to be, in my opinion.
No, it was just strange because when you were like, when I was 14 or 15 and getting into hardcore and stuff, someone like Bob Mould, who was 22 or 23, seemed like a senior.
Sure, yeah,
Greg
yeah,
Sage, even Poison Idea, who would be like 3 years older than me. I was
yeah,
like, yes, sir. Okay, you're like
yeah,
you,
yeah,
and it just that energy in the scene was really fascinating. So when other 15-year-olds are standing side by side, but it did feel kind of special and strange. It was like, oh shit, we can do this now.
yeah. I will say, and again, this is probably partly because I'm a dad, so my kids are grown at this point, but a few years makes a big difference when you're young. Like at our age now, a few years, like, it doesn't mean anything when you're old,
Right.
but like some of the guys I'm in a band with now, like they're kind of a generation behind me, I guess you could say, in the Louisville punk scene. But that's just because I'm like 4 years older than them. You know what I
Right.
mean? Like
Right.
back then, I saw a lot of stuff they didn't see, and they saw a lot of stuff that I didn't see because I was
Right.
kind of already done with it. But it was such a short span of time. It's kind of fascinating, really. Like 3 years makes a huge difference, and part of that is actually I was just telling somebody about this the other day. Like I didn't grow up in the Highlands, which is the neighborhood I live in now that like Britt grew up in, Brian grew up in. I grew up out in the suburbs. Well, I didn't have anybody to catch a ride with to come to the punk shows because they were all pretty much downtown or in the Highlands, unless it was like a total DIY thing at somebody's house or something.
Mhm.
So it took me getting to be 16 before I could go see a band play, like a punk band that I wanted to see. So, part of me is jealous of these other guys that
Sure.
knew older people that would take them places. And, they had more access than I guess I did. Actually, the reason I was bringing it up is the first show I ever went to was probably a half a mile from where I'm at right now, and Squirrel Bait was supposed to play, and they didn't play, and I never saw them play live, and I'm still like, I'm not bitter about it. I'm just sad about it, because I know them all now. I know them all now and everything, but like I was
Yeah.
like, damn, I cannot believe I never saw that band. Anyway, that's a separate problem.
Well, and it's great, Lance Banks's documentary about Slint and the previous bands before it, Breadcrumb Trail. There's something really interesting in it that you just touched on that he mentions in the film, which is basically the two punk scenes. There was like the East Enders, which they said were more privileged and arty, and the South End, which is more working class. You know,
Yeah.
how did they intersect? How did they cross over?
I mean, some of the early hardcore, like there's a band, again, I never saw them. I'm real good friends with one of the guys in the band who was in the band, Malignant Growth. They were South Enders. I mean, it was probably just different vibes. There was this whole group of people called the Louisville Hardcore Army. Again, they were older than me, even though I know a lot of them now, and they're they're like some of my best friends or whatever. But the word on the street is they used to go to shows and knock heads and whatever, kind of the same way you hear about like Ian McKay and Henry Rollins, and like they were kind of troublemakers,
Right.
uh, like there's a place close to Cincinnati called the Jockey Club that was in Newport, Kentucky. Uh, Pretty much a dump, but a lot of shows would happen up there. Again, I had to get older before I could figure out a way to get there. But I get the feeling they would raise a ruckus at these kinds of, not like just randomly beating people up, but like they were a major presence, like a lot of football players, and they're from the South End and stuff. So, some of those guys I remember when I was like 16 or whatever being intimidated, but then once I became friends with them, I was like, well, I'm glad they're my friends because I know nobody's going to mess with me if I'm standing here with them, because they were not small people.
Right. Do you remember the first time you heard Slint?
I think I went and saw them play. I was not at their very first show, which was the weird show at the church.
Right.
Where Will Oldham was in the band, but from what I've heard, all he did was like sit in front of the kick drum and basically do nothing. Uh, so I may be wrong about that. And at one point, Brian claimed he had a tape of that show, but he never could find it, like a micro cassette tape of it.
There's some footage in Lance's film, and I don't know if it's from that exact show, but when they talk about it, they cut to a
Yeah,
show.
I think that was the St. Francis Battle of the Bands, which I did not
Oh,
go to
right.
that either.
Okay.
Uh, but I think the first time I saw him live was opening up for Killdozer at this place called Tooligans. So I of course knew Dave already because we'd been in a band together. Um, or they played at I can't say for sure. I can name shows that I saw of theirs before I was in the band. But like they played at that big black show at the VFW hall, and I had a cassette 4-track machine, and for a few years I tried to record like all kinds of different stuff. Like I was just learning about recording. So I recorded that opening up for Big Black at that VFW hall, and then I remember seeing Brian at the mall walking around with his girlfriend at the time, who's a good friend of mine. Uh, and he was like, "Can I borrow that 4-track sometime?" Well, he used that recording that I made and my 4-track to demo the vocals for Tweeze. Uh,
Incredible.
yeah, so I guess, in a way, I kind of helped him out before I was in the band or whatever, because I didn't really know him very well at that point.
Did you understand what they were doing at the time?
I mean, I think so because I remember, I mean, I was real into it,
Uh-huh.
and that's probably part of why I threw my name in the hat when Ethan quit, because I thought what they were doing was cool, like I was into it, like especially a song like Rhoda. I was like, no, this is different,
Right.
not that I'm a super intellectual kind of musicologist type guy, but um, as soon as people start talking about time signatures and stuff, I'm like, yeah, I guess whatever,
Yeah.
like I'm not really, I mean, I have studied music at times, like I have a degree from the IU School of Music, but if you put like sheet music in front of me, I might be able to eventually figure it out one finger at a time on a piano or something. But no, I recognized that they were doing something different.
Yeah. Well, the nice thing about the film is there's so much archival access to seeing you in a basement, which Britt's parents' basement, right?
Correct,
Practicing.
correct. Yeah, yeah.
And just the way you guys are. I mean, in the film, somebody says the band talked to each other with like through lasers, coming out of their eyes. I'm just curious about how something so hypnotic could be composed.
Mostly it was somebody would have some riffs and then we would all work to arrange it. And, Britt and Brian were kind of the masterminds, I'm going to say. And plus, I had just joined. And um, I guess I will say this is all me talking now, looking back as an adult. So who knows what
Sure.
was going through my head at the time, really, but probably not much. But uh, I knew I was the new guy, so I wasn't gonna get too up in arms about anything. But I would say Britt mostly, and then Brian secondly drove where things went. Like,
Mhm.
every bass line I played in that band, Britt wrote. Like
Okay.
he would have stuff figured out or we would work on it. But no, we didn't really improvise. We would improvise like maybe how to go from riff A to riff B or something.
Okay. Okay.
Uh, but there was no like, let's jam on this thing and see what happens. It was all it was more figured out than that.
Yeah, in the film, somebody says that you were practicing 5 days a week, so I just assumed maybe there was more improvisation. But in the film, they do say
Yeah,
that.
I mean that was true. Now there were times where, man, I'm just telling this to be funny. Although at the time I didn't find it funny, but it's like, well, 5 days a week, except you show up over there and wait for 2 hours for one
Yeah,
person to finally show up. I mean,
sure.
if you've been in bands, you know how it goes. Like I'm the kind of freak that usually just shows up on time when like I'm too responsible, really.
Me
Uh,
too.
yeah, I wish I could not be so much. It'd probably be more enjoyable. But anyway, it wasn't like we always were practicing for 5 hours, 5 days a
Right.
week. Like I'm sure there were times we were lucky to play for an hour. But we for basically only working on 5 songs, 5 or 6 songs, because I guess there's one song we didn't use on the album. I mean, that's a lot of practicing for not very many songs. So um, who knows?
It's such a different style and pace than what you had been playing before, coming from hardcore. Like, did you learn to play differently in that band?
I'm sure I did, and I was never really a real bass player, but evidently I could keep up. I mean, that's
Right.
like when I listen back to it, like some of the footage from the basement, I can step back and I was like, wow, me and Britt are pretty much locked in, like I guess
It's
I'm kind of
amazing.
kind of proud of it or whatever.
Yeah.
So did I go home and practice a whole bunch on my own? Not really. I guess I was just lucky I had good rhythm or whatever. But I mean, Britt's one of the best drummers in the world, I would argue.
Yes, absolutely.
So you can only, um, if you have any, what am I trying to say? It's all supposed to be complimentary towards him. Like, if I'm any kind of player, I'm not going to have to worry about tempo variance or whatever. Like, he's going to be locked in no matter what. So luckily I was able to keep up.
In the film, David said he was emulating the sound of D. Boone's guitar in the Minutemen. Did you have a sound in mind for your bass?
Not really. I would say in a lot of ways, like the bass I played, Britt owns that bass.
Okay.
And we did buy me an amp we had a thing here called the Bargain Mart that was like a newspaper that would be at the grocery store, and you would pay $3, and then it
Right.
just had classifieds in it. So that we got my bass amp from the Bargain Mart. Uh, but I think Britt mostly dialed in the sound of it.
Mhm.
And it probably sounds a little bit different than Ethan's sound and how it sounded on Tweeze. But no, I didn't have like many thoughts about, oh, I want it to sound like this or that. I do remember putting up a little bit of a fight about using my own bass instead of his bass, but then I figured out, like, no, he really wants me to use this, so I give up. I don't know why I cared, really. I mean, I
Yeah,
was basically a young person, I'm sure.
exactly. That's
Maybe
what
it's
you,
just like, maybe it's just a little bit of like, don't you tell me what to do or something
right.
like that.
What about, in the film, Matt Sweeney says, he talks about scene Slint, and he says, nobody was talking. The band did not move a muscle. Again, especially coming from hardcore, where I feel like we were kind of maniacs on stage.
Yeah, yeah.
What did was that? What did that feel like to have so much space? Were you comfortable in it?
I think some of it is the music wasn't that easy to play, at least for me. But somehow I'm going to say it doesn't feel like jumping around music for sure. I mean, I think if I went, like, let's just say hypothetically, we ever did another tour, which I don't think we ever will, but I bet I would probably make a point of not just standing there the whole time. Probably just because I don't know why. It just seems like I probably wouldn't. Uh, but I don't remember us ever talking about it or anything. I mean, we even though it was very serious, we were pretty silly, and we did some pretty
Right.
silly stuff at shows also. So
Okay.
we might have stood there rigidly, but I mean, I was just telling somebody the other day about when we played in Boston, we opened up with an instrumental version of the Modern Lovers Roadrunner, just
Wow.
as like it was the spirit of it was kind of like, okay, Boston, here's what it was, kind of a FU kind of thing, really.
Yeah.
I mean, even though we loved that album, I mean, we're listening to that stuff all the time,
Right.
but it was done in the spirit of like, here, let's see what you think about this. Like as our opening song. We used to open up with Rise Above sometimes, like instrumental version of Black Flag's Rise Above. So even though we didn't move around, it wasn't all like we didn't take ourselves super seriously, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, and if you're devouring all the touch and go stuff, which had such a sense of humor, the Butthole Surfers and Killdozer and Urge Overkill, it's like it kind of was part of the music scene to be a little transgressive and weird and humorous and kind of bratty.
Yeah, yeah. It was in the water.
Yeah, whether you even like a band like Sebado, which wrote like really catchy songs, seeing them live, you're like, they're still holding on to something from the mid 80s of just kind of like, yeah, we're going to kind of ruin this show. We're going to
Yeah, yeah,
destroy it.
yeah. Yeah. And I mean, it's on the internet on YouTube, I guess, but I mean, this makes me cringe now, even though it's still pretty funny. Uh, when we opened up for Urge Overkill at the Metro, which was probably one of our bigger, well, I know it was like a pretty high profile show. And they like loved us. They were friends with Britt and Brian. They like, were standing behind the soundboard when we did our sound check, advocating for our sound. And well, then we get up on stage and Brian like tells the whole audience what we got paid compared to what they got paid. And it's on the internet, you can hear it. And I don't even remember and like when he gets to what Urge Overkill got paid, Paho is like bang on his guitar. Like, just that's a pretty asshole move, like when this band asks
Uh,
you to open up for them or
oh, it's funny
whatever.
though.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, but it's like the kind of crap you're talking about.
right,
And I don't think we actually really cared about what we got paid. I mean, I didn't
right.
give a shit. But
Yeah. And with Spiderland, that must have been just such a different record to make compared to what you've been on before.
yeah, it was pretty intense. It was well, I can just speak about me. To me, that was like the big leagues. Like, wow, I'm going to be in a band that's on a label that has all this stuff that I really like. Like, I mean, it was all pretty nerve-wracking to me. And we didn't have much time. Um, and like Britt, even though he was right, I mean, it all seems to have worked out pretty well. But like, this might be in that documentary. I can't remember, but we pull into Chicago, and all of a sudden, Britt. To me, this is how it seemed. It may not have been all of a sudden, but he wants to go to the Guitar Center in Chicago to buy all new cymbals, and I'm like, what like we're supposed to like go record. Again, it's part of that responsibility thing.
Yeah.
We were probably on the clock at the studio and we're going to buy all new cymbals.
Yes.
Uh, but again, it seems to have worked out. Just but I remember being pretty stressed out about it all, to tell you the truth.
Yeah. When it comes out, you're on Touch and Go. I remember seeing the record and just being like, I've never heard of this band, right? But it's on Touch and Go. So,
Yeah,
you did the same thing with like whether it was Quarter Stick or Homestead or SST. It kind of validated you're gonna try it, right?
right,
But
right.
it still is amazing. And I was talking to Lance Bangs about it on an early episode. How to me, I just assumed because it said Touch and Go on it, you guys were fine. You were huge. You were selling records just because you were on this label that had so many of my heroes on it,
Yeah, yeah.
and it's such an illusion, even on an independent scale. But I was wondering, you know, when it was done and the band is breaking up, was it enough that it just had come out, or was it hard to just be like, well, this could have been the beginning of something, and it just didn't follow?
Again, looking back as an adult and thinking about myself, what it might have been like, because my kids are basically around the age I would have been now. Um, I don't know if I really processed it all that much, to tell you the truth. Like, I do think it's interesting that we just kind of, like, I don't remember being mad at Brian really, although I had every reason to be. I mean, I'd taken a whole year off from college and stuff, but I think when you're young, maybe you just kind of roll with stuff a lot more. Like we all still hung out with each other. We all played on Will's first record, Palace Brothers record, to be more clear about what I'm talking about. Um, like there didn't really seem to be any major hard feelings. We all just like kind of went on with it.
Yeah.
But to answer your question, I don't think I processed it all that much, because it probably would have been pretty sad if I had. You know what I mean? So maybe I've processed it more now, but no, at the time, I thought my attitude was like, it definitely wasn't about money or anything. But I really believed in what we were doing. And I was like, even though this will sound kind of cheesy, but like we were supposed to tour Europe. And like I didn't have a passport yet, but I remember us filling out the forms that I guess was like the rider kind of stuff or whatever. Because I remember it said like, "What do you require backstage?" And Britt wrote makers, 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 meaning like Maker's Mark bourbon.
Uh-huh.
Like that was pretty funny to me at the time. So I remember it being like, let's kick some ass, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like let's like I want to show people what we got, you know, even though for that music it seems kind of funny. It's not like we're Motorhead or something, you know, like we're so anyway, that was my attitude. It wasn't about like, oh, I'm gonna make it big and I can do this for a job or something. Like I wasn't even thinking about it past that tour, you know. And I only recently went to Europe, so like it's been a long time coming, you know. My oldest son was studying in Prague, so me and my youngest son went over there to visit him. So I only just now went to Europe for the first time, you know. Yeah,
No, I mean bands broke up. Like I always look
yeah,
at
it's pretty
Mission of
normal.
Burma, and I'm like, Mission of Burma were around a blip. It
Yeah,
was like,
yeah.
and then they just went on with their lives, right? And some did
Yeah, man,
music, some didn't.
I wish I would have seen them when they were on their reunion tour because those albums were good. Those new
And
albums
those
they did.
shows were great.
Yeah, I regret not trying. I mean, my kids were little, so I probably cut myself some slack. But my wife's cousin, who's a good friend of mine, is currently in a band with Roger Miller, which kind of blows my
Incredible.
mind when I think it's called the Trinary System. Like I still every once in a while will be like, man, I can't believe my cousin-in-law is in a band with Roger Miller, and like he knows all the Mission of Burma guys just because he's up in Massachusetts, you know, crazy.
It's so funny because in my notes here, I mean, not knowing that Britt wrote a lot of your bass lines, I thought tonally you were very Clint Conley, in terms of just the sound, just the way it rang out, the melodicism of it, but also just the haunted nature. I was like,
I'll take it.
I wonder if Clint was an influence.
I mean, I still have all my Mission of Burma records, you know,
Yeah,
like I tend to sell stuff. I'm not like a real collector. Like I sell things. Sometimes I regret it, but I kept all my Mission of Burma records, you know.
what about working with Will? You've recorded like 8 or 9 records with Will Oldham at this point. What was that like jumping into that? Because he was just like a close friend, right?
Just seemed like a natural thing to do because that's what we did back then is like play music and you know it wasn't that big of a period of my life but um that's what I liked to do was play music and record music, you know. So he lived up in Bloomington when I was lived with me, and the guy who recorded the first Palace Brothers album on cassette 8 track, if that's interesting to you.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but one of my projects, even though we were not supposed to do this, I'm not, hopefully the statute of limitations has run out on this, but I went to school for audio technology. So
Okay.
one of my projects was the first Palace Brothers single, the Ohio River Boat Song. We were not supposed to commercially release the stuff we recorded for our projects, but I was like, they'll never know, you know.
Right.
It's on Drag City. They don't know what Drag City is.
Right.
Anyway, so I don't know. It just kind of organically happened, I think. Like, I don't even remember thinking to myself, damn, all of a sudden he can write really good songs. We just
Right.
kind of, that it's just not something you do when you're young, I don't think. You know, you just kind of
Okay.
live from day to, I mean, now when I look back, I'm like, wow, that's crazy that he like started writing like good songs kind of out of nowhere. Like to me, that's how it seemed
Yeah.
because I wasn't sitting with him when he was at home working on all of it or whatever. But who would have known, you know, that someday Johnny Cash would be recording one of his songs and all the things that have happened with him, you know. But no, we just did it because that's what we did.
It's really nice to talk to somebody who also opened a video store in the late 90s. I started mine in 96 in Portland at a time where we couldn't get a loan because there was a moratorium on lending to video stores because Hollywood and Blockbuster were putting out the mom and pops. So, like, what made you want to start this?
So I had saved some money up from Slint. I mean, it wasn't much. It was probably like 10 grand or something. And, you know, I was married at that point, and I think my wife and I were talking, and it was either like, well, we could use it for a down payment on a house, or I could, she joked and said, and I don't know if I'm getting this exactly right, but in spirit, it's going to be right. Maybe you could open up Todd's little store, meaning like, um, I had talked about opening a record store or just some kind of store. And I think where that came from is I have an uncle who owns a furniture store in a more rural part of Kentucky. And I spent a lot of time there, like during the summers with my cousins and stuff. And I just somehow like the idea of like being a guy that owns a store.
Sure.
But at the time we had plenty of record stores in town. I mean, we probably have more now, but this was when record stores, I guess I'm just going to say, weren't as niche. Like, you know, they were record stores that carried everything, like
Right.
mainstream CDs, like when record stores were still like, I mean, they're still viable, but you get what I'm saying, like viable in a mainstream, like in a mainstream way.
Right.
So I was like, well, we got enough of those, so there's no reason to do that. What else do I wish existed in Louisville that does not exist? Like a cult movie type store. Like, you know, it wasn't an original idea because I've already been to places that were like what I thought Louisville needed. You know, like I think at that point I'd already been to. I don't know this for sure, but I think I'd already visited a buddy of mine who lives close to New York City, and I'm pretty sure I'd already been to Kim's and
Right.
all
Absolutely.
a few of the different places there. So it wasn't an original idea; it was just original to this town, you know.
Right. Yeah, it's funny, a VHS tape in 1997. Like if you wanted to buy an Austin Power videotape to be in your store, it was like anywhere from $55 to $80 a thing.
Yeah, yeah.
And so $10,000, as we found too, did not go very far. And we were just like, well, we're just gonna start a video store in a house. We're gonna stockpile stuff. We're gonna put it on credit cards.
I did a lot of that too.
We were lucky it worked. Like, how did you start acquiring this stuff?
It sounds like you're saying you had new releases when you first opened. Is that
Yeah.
true? I didn't
Yes.
carry new releases for a long time after I opened. I think it was my first location I finally did, but when I first opened, it was all obscurities, you know, unless you're into that kind of stuff, and then it wasn't. But I think what really started turning the tide for me was there was a local chain of video stores called Roadrunner. They were like total time capsules because they just you could go to one in town, and other than the new stuff, it was probably the same original stock that they had when they first opened in 1980 whatever,
Right.
like all big box stuff. uh
Yep.
well, they started selling off a lot of that stuff, like I guess
Right.
because they were not doing well. So like the stuff they thought was not worth having, like Russ Meyer movies, like a more obscure horror movies. I just started buying them up from their stores. Like I would just go from store to store. They were selling them for like 7.99, and they would, once I opened up the thing that was uh, worthless to them was like a hit in my store. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I did the same thing. There were all these stores that were closing, and they were just like, "Here you go, kid." And it was, again, you're talking Russ Meyer, David Lynch, stuff from Facets in Chicago. So like really like the most obscure foreign stuff, experimental film.
Yeah. See, we didn't have any of that here until my store opened. Like experimental and facets. I mean, I'll give myself a little bit of credit. Like we didn't really have that stuff in Louisville.
Yeah, but what was funny was I knew that that stuff was for me, kind of. I did have a clientele that liked, like my Bosnian film section or my Scandinavian stuff or the documentary section. But it was also a neighborhood store with people bringing their families in. And I was like, all right, you getting this 21st dates or 51st dates, whatever, VHS tape
Yeah.
is helping me get the thing that I personally want to see, that I'm dying to see,
Yeah.
that will never go out. It
Yeah.
was really
Yeah.
funny.
Well, we had porn, not originally, but eventually I was just like, I guess I'll just get it because people won't shut up about it, you know? And I knew it was part of the old school video store business model, but it wasn't a huge part of our business. But I
Right.
always looked at that as it was the thing that um, made it so I could carry all this other stuff that, I felt
Okay.
like we should have, but that never made its money back. You know what I mean? Like,
Right.
I bet most criterions that we had, which was more or less all of them,
Yeah.
I'd be surprised if any of them ever made their money back. You know what I mean?
Oh,
But
yeah.
porn is what helped make that happen. Uh, so anyway, that's how I made it kind of make sense.
Yeah. It was funny. We didn't have a porn section, but we did have things like Taxi Zone Clo or whatever, or oh, we have Ultra Vixens. It was,
Yeah,
or we
yeah,
have Flaming Creatures. We had this stuff that was like, oh, you want some adult fare? I'm sorry, this
yeah,
is
yeah,
this is what we have. It's not what you're looking for, but
yeah,
or Thundercrack, right?
yeah, yeah.
It's like,
Nah, we had a lot of just straight up porn, but we,
right.
from what people told me, I mean, I know you probably don't want to have a giant discussion about porn, or maybe you do. I don't
It's
know,
it's
but
okay. We're
we
here.
carried the good stuff. Like most of the
Right.
stores in town would just get the cheapest, like junk, and I always carried like the top shelf. More expensive things and gay porn too. Well, most stores wouldn't even have gay porn because I think
Right.
there were some stores in Kentucky, like some distributors would not send any porn to Kentucky. Some would not send gay
Wow.
porn because I think there had been some legal issues where stores had gotten in trouble, because it was
Right.
declared obscene or whatever.
Right.
So the gay porn renters were really appreciative because not only did
Yeah.
we have it, it was like the good stuff.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. They're like, thank
So
you.
anyway,
Right.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So anyway,
It
you
it
know,
was funny. I was so naive owning a store. I'm like you. I book my band's tours. I'm the first person to show up. I'm like very good about time management. But I was so naive when I was like, oh, a store, when it's slow, I'll just sit and write songs on my guitar. And right away it was
yeah,
like, no, you are busy all the time and
yeah,
you'll never have any moments alone. And
yeah.
it was me coming from like this really like, oh, indie background, DIY thing. Do you remember like when you first started, were you your sole employee?
I was, yeah, yeah. I think when the very beginning, I was still working my other job, which
Right.
was basically was a tape dubber at a place that distributed radio commercials, and that was a night job Monday through Friday. And I was doing what I could to like see if it was going to fly or not, the video store. Plus, I had health insurance. So the hours were pretty limited at first, but then the local paper was going to do like the gist of the article was bad movies, but
Oh,
who cares if I get publicity or whatever.
right.
Uh, but when that article was due to come out, that's when I quit my job. I'm pretty sure I may not have exactly, if it wasn't right then, it was soon after, because I was like, all right, if I'm going to make a go with this, I can't like half ass it
Right.
and also not be open during the time that people really want to rent movies.
Right.
So yeah, it was just me for a while, and then I got a guy working there who uh, there was these guys. I'm still friends with all these guys. They lived real close by, and they were into what I had, but also they would just come up and hang out. So we all just
Right.
got to know each other. And I must have said something like, "Yeah, I'm thinking about getting somebody to work up here." And basically, the qualifications were they could work on Wednesday night. So that was the interview, basically.
Right.
So I finally did get somebody else who worked on Wednesday night.
Yeah. No, it was funny. We for a long time I was the only employee. And then I was like, I'm going to hire my music friends to work, which was not awesome. Like
Yeah.
they were just not built for it. And so then I started hiring from the customer base. And I had a customer named Todd who came in one day. I dropped the cash bag in the street. He came in
Wow.
and said, "You dropped this." And he ended up working for me for almost 20 years.
Wow. Yeah.
My employee Eric worked for me for 18. Yeah,
That's a
and it
good
was
way to
like,
do it.
yeah, because you're like, this person's never late. They've got good taste, and I was always like, the people who knew the most about film were my worst employees. I was like, people who would just be happy to work there and learn about film and liked talking to people, um, and weren't bummed out, to
Yeah.
be on their
Yeah.
feet,
Yeah.
because you came from retail. Like in the film, they talk about you working in a pet shop, right?
Yeah. That's where I first met Britt and Will.
Right. So I think there's something about like if you've dealt with that world of like commerce and retail, you kind of understand what's expected for you maybe than if you've just never stepped foot in that.
Yeah, yeah. No, the thing you said about you have no free time, I used to get a lot of people that, I mean, even after the store had been open for a while, they were like, it must be nice to get paid to just sit around watch movies all day. It's like, yeah, like, sure. Yeah,
I listened to so many movies that I mean, I just put them on. I knew the sound of the film, but I
yeah,
never watched it. Like I could tell
yeah,
you the dialogue and the music that happens when they come through a door. But yeah, watching something was like a real luxury in the store because
yeah,
it
yeah.
wasn't a reality.
Which is, it means you got customers, which is good.
Yeah. What about the late list? Like, how did you do? To me, the late list was soul crushing. And I did it because I didn't want my employees to have to do it because it was just a bummer. And I remember, like, I would take it so personally. I'd be like, hey, it's Chris from Clint Street Video. You've had this film out for 20 days. I'm a small store. It'd mean a lot if I could get it. And I just felt like a dick, but at the same time, I was like, fuck you. You have this thing I
Yeah.
love. I took it personally.
I mean, once I had employees, like when I closed my store, I still had like 12 or 13 employees. They did it. And I'm sure in the early years, I let it get to me, but I just kind of, I don't know, I just knew it wasn't going to be good for me if I took it
Yes.
personally. And like when I closed my store, so many movies got stolen.
Oh, wow.
Uh, and I didn't even look at the list because I just knew it was going to be way too depressing. Like we tried as best we could to get people to bring them back. But once we said we were closing, it was like a free for all.
Yeah.
I mean, most people didn't do it, but way more than usual never came back. But I was just like, I don't even want to print it out. Like it's
Yeah.
just going to be too depressing. like it's just part of the whole deal. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? So I just didn't go there, I guess is basically what I'm saying.
Right.
I tried for a while. I mean, I don't know about where you live, but like I did hear about uh, states and cities where you could like report it as a crime and the cops would go over there and like get your movies for you.
Oh, wow.
Well, not here. So,
No, that did not happen in
yeah,
Portland.
I did try small claims court, a couple of
Yeah.
times. Waste of time. Like
Yeah.
even if you won the case, like trying to get the person's wages garnished and all this
Yeah.
crap I was like, all right, that's a total waste of time.
It was weird because I was like, you stealing the one or two things right now, you don't get access to the other 30,000 things I have in the
Yeah,
store. Like, really?
yeah.
Like, that's your choice? Okay, fair enough. It was really kind of mind blowing.
Yeah, I mean, the people, I hate to paint with a broad stroke, but we used to call it renting to steal.
Mm,
Like you could tell the thing we would do is if somebody was new, you could only rent three things the first time,
right.
which helped a little bit. But like when somebody would come in and try to rent like eight things, and
Yes,
you like if you worked there long enough, you just knew.
absolutely.
If it was like
Yes.
Faces of Death, Five Deadly Venoms, I don't know
Yeah.
what else it would be. Like just the stuff that was always out.
Yeah.
Like we used to just call it they're renting to steal.
Yeah.
So we would
No.
try, but sometimes it just happened, like
Right.
pretty. But I don't think the people, to finish my thought, I don't think the people that do that um, are worried about what happens next. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like they've already got 10 collection agencies after them.
Right.
Like they know how to disappear. Like they're used to this whole process.
Was there something when you started the store that was kind of a holy grail for you to find that you were like, I've heard about this film. It would really it would mean something to the identity of this business.
Not any one particular film, but I can tell you I mean, I remember it vividly for a change. The things I got and who they came from,
Sure.
it's kind of like I was buying a section in a way because part of my attitude, like I wasn't a movie collector. Like people assumed that I was like a big movie collector before I opened the store, and I really wasn't, and I'm still not really. Um, like most of the time, if I buy a movie, I'll watch it and then I'll sell it.
Right.
Um, but it was more like certain groups of things that were holy grails to me. So, like, one that was big was I got a bunch of Dario Argento movies. And, they were all VHS tapes taken from Japanese laser discs.
Wow.
But those were movies I've been dying to see. So I thought if it goes under, at least I'll have gotten to see them.
Yes.
And I can even remember where I got them from. And then I got a bunch of stuff from Something Weird Video.
Hmm.
I got a bunch of stuff from Thai Sing, which I don't know if you ever
Yes.
dealt with
I
them, but
totally
like,
with the two VHS tapes to make
yeah,
one
Hong
movie.
Kong,
Yes.
yeah, Hong Kong action movies. Did you
Incredible.
ever deal with Did you ever deal with Frank at Thai
No,
Sing?
I dealt with a place in Portland that was called Asia TV. That
Okay.
that had it was like they were like a video store and they were selling things that weren't moving anymore. But it was the era again. It sounds quaint, but like Jackie Chan, John Woo,
Yeah.
Chow Yun Fat, all this stuff, Sammo Hung, all these films were just starting to kind of bubble in the underground, and it was
Yep. Yep.
addictive. I don't know how it was for you, but like I just once I discovered something, I just would be like Ray Dennis Steckler, let's say,
Yeah.
I'd be like,
Yeah.
oh, I gotta get there. He made how many films? It was just a race.
Yeah.
It was a race.
Me and a buddy of mine who owns a video store still, I think he's quit renting, but it's called Orbit DVD in Asheville. We were in Vegas and we had dinner with Ray Dennis Steckler.
Oh
Uh,
my God. What was he
yeah,
like?
yeah,
So for the listeners, Ray Dennis Steckler was a really, I mean, you're talking about independent, like no budget filmmaker from LA who would kind of be like, I'm going to make a bunch of kids films called the Lemon Grove Kids. All right. Now I'm going to make an adult film. Now I'm going to make a psychedelic horror musical, which was Incredibly Strange Creatures that became mixed up zombies and stopped living. But he had kind of a European sensibility to him, like really surreal, lots of color. And yeah, his stuff's magical, but like meeting him, I can't even imagine what he would be like.
yeah. He had a video store that I think we didn't go. I don't remember why.
Wow.
I know we would have tried to go to it, and his stuff is one of the first things I ever had in my store.
Yeah,
And it was because of that Incredibly Strange Films book, that research book.
absolutely.
But he was just kind of a normal dude,
Yeah,
really. Like his wife came. We ate at like a chain barbecue place, and it was kind of, I guess I'm gonna say, cute. Like he brought a coupon for a free appetizer,
nice.
so we could get a free appetizer.
He didn't go like, I'm Cash Flag. Let me
No, he was. I think he was just excited. I mean, I'm getting old enough to where I can relate to his attitude. Like,
Sure.
I'm glad somebody just wants to hang out with me. You know what
Yes.
I mean? I don't mean that like, oh, poor me. I'm just saying I'm 55 and like, um, we're close to some of the friends of my kids, and like it's like, wow, they actually seem like they're interested in talking to me. That's so
Right.
weird. You're just happy that like somebody wants to hang out with you.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I don't mean that in like a morbid or like, oh, poor me kind of way. It's just part of when you're older, I think,
Right.
like somebody younger, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Right.
So he was totally chill,
Oh,
it was fun.
amazing. Amazing. Yeah. One
Yeah.
of my heroes. And again, that research book, was pivotal because it was just hard in the 80s to find these films, on VHS even. And so you would just
Yeah.
read
Yeah.
and reread it and kind of imagine what a film would be like by Ray Dennis Steckler or Doris Wishman or even Russ Myers. It was just like
Yeah. Yeah.
it's so funny, but it definitely led me to opening the store because it was so next it was so adjacent to music, that book, and research and all of it. What made you decide to close the store?
Well, it'd been declining. I was going to ask you the same thing, but I'm
Sure.
really trying not to turn this into me interviewing you
No, I'll
the
talk
whole
about it.
time. Because, yeah, yeah. Um, it had been declining for a
Yeah.
while. I mean, probably, I don't know about you, but I started getting worried when Netflix started doing the rent by mail thing. Like,
Yeah.
there was a pretty long period of worry.
Yeah. And there was something called Gizmo too or something like that where I remember you could it would be mailed to your house and then you could go to like a coffee shop and drop them off in the mail. And
We never had that, or I don't remember that at all.
yeah, it was just it hurt my stomach when that started happening.
Yeah, yeah. So as far as why did I specifically pick when I did, I wanted to close while my inventory was still worth something.
Right.
So that's like we could have stayed. I don't think March 23rd will be 10 years, I'm pretty sure, since I closed.
Right.
I'm sure we could have, I could have started trimming my staff, getting less movies. Like we could have lasted longer. But my concern, partly because I had a line of credit that I needed to make sure I paid off.
Sure.
But my main concern was I didn't want to drag it out so long that then I just had to sell all this stuff for like 25 cents a disc or
Sure.
something.
Sure. Yeah.
So that was what made me call it sooner as opposed to later.
Yeah.
What about you?
Uh my wife was like, "You're calling me 8 times a day telling me that no one's coming to the store." I just
That'll do it.
at a certain
Yeah.
point, I had very loyal customers, and they were amazing. I did want to mention this too. One of the great things about having a video store is you see people that maybe come 3 to 5 times a week to see you, and the amount of their lives they shared with me just being a video store owner was amazing. I knew
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
marriages, the breakups, the highs, the lows of their life, and I'm like just
Yeah.
a video store owner, and I was very touched by that. So those people were still around, but it was just getting boring, and I just said I was going to close it on our anniversary. So I closed.
I did the same thing.
Yeah,
I did the same thing.
yeah. And then my wife was like, "Why are you waiting another 6 months though? I mean, like, no one's expecting you to close on your anniversary." And I was like, "All right." And so I put a sign up saying we're closing in a month, and I felt really good because the people that came out to support the store in that last period was just beautiful. Like, everyone was so appreciative of what we did. We had a big party at the independent movie theater across the street where I showed a film called The Way Things Go. And I thanked everyone, and I got so emotional. I was really shocked, like just seeing, 200 people sold out and at the movie theater there because of a video store just to say goodbye. It
Yeah.
was
Yeah.
really, really beautiful. But it was time. I just I didn't know what I was going to do next, but I definitely was like, I don't want to have to convince people even more because that, we dealt with it with Netflix mailing it out, and then we had streaming. I just didn't want to be like, well, I'm enough. You should just come in because it's me, right? I'm an independent
Yeah.
business.
Yeah.
It was bigger than that, it was people just had changed their habits, So
Yeah. Louisville's okay for supporting independent business, but like in Asheville, I feel like it's just because that guy I know has the store there. Like they really do support, like hardcore support local stuff.
amazing.
Here, I mean, we had a lot of good support, but like it's not as strong here as it is maybe in Asheville or I don't know,
Yeah.
just other places that aren't here. Um, yeah, one thing that happened that you might find funny is we would get people who would hold up a movie in the store and then yell across the store and be like, "Do you know if this is on Netflix?"
Oh my God, yes.
And I'd just be
Yeah.
like, "Well, no." I felt like saying it. It felt like saying a lot more to them. But that to me was like, all right, things are really changing.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
It was weird when I only raised my prices once by like 25 cents, and I was just sweating. I was like, okay, it's going to 225. And new releases will be 350, and everyone was like, that's nothing. Like, we're cool,
Yeah.
but
Yeah. Yeah.
I have here the list of Wild and Woolly's top 20 rentals of all time. Do you have an idea of what
Okay.
the number one was?
Uh, I can think of our top seller of all time. Oh, Pam and Tommy Lee.
Okay,
Is that number one?
it was the
Yeah.
original Wicker Man.
Oh, okay. Well, that actually, yeah, I guess that would be a rental. I was thinking that was our number one seller,
Yeah.
but I'm wrong. Yeah, yeah. That was the movie I was going to say, but I thought I was talking. I haven't thought about this in a while.
Yeah, of course.
So, yeah, I felt like Pam and Tommy Lee was our number one renter of all
Oh,
time, maybe.
yeah,
But,
that makes sense.
yeah. Yeah. Anyway, yeah. Yeah. Wicker Man was big, even though a lot of people that brought it back were like, why do you like this? Or, why? Um, Several people were not a fan of that
Of
movie.
Wicker
You know
Man.
what I mean?
It was so weird.
Yeah,
I've seen
yeah,
it. I watched it recently, and I was really, I don't know what I'd suppressed. There are so many musical sequences in the original Wicker Man
yeah. Like
that I
I
was
think that's what
shocked.
turns some people off.
Yeah, they're like,
Like where she's kind of dancing
yes,
around and
lip syncing.
singing.
And you're like, this is a musical sequence. And here's another one. And here's another song. And I was like, Oh wow, I'd repress that part of this film.
Yeah,
So
I bet that's why some people are like thumbs down,
so you move into yet another independent business that you start and you own. Like did did you know you were going to move into the Wild and Woolly Pilates thing as you were closing this, or how did that happen?
Yeah, that was my plan. I think originally what got me, well, I'd already done it myself. Like I was a fan of it as a form of exercise. And actually, Will was a big proponent of it now. And I taught Paho some Pilates there for a while. So we've made some inroads in the music world, I guess. The original way that it popped in my head was the location of the video store. I owned that building at the time.
Okay.
And it was basically just a big barn, like it was a big open building. And so at that time, I was trying to think of what else could I do where I could use this building. Well, come to find out, that wasn't going to be the best location for what I'm doing, and it worked out, at least for a while, better for me to rent it to somebody else. Like basically, the rent was too high, the parking was difficult in that area, several reasons. But that's what got it in my head. But I don't know. I had some friends who were in the game, and they encouraged me just because I'm a man, which is somewhat rare in this world. Even though Pilates was invented by a man, kind of crazy German guy, Joe Pilates. Um, he was a boxer, like kind of a manly man. So I just thought I might have a niche, kind of. And I'm a believer in it. So that's, not a great business to have during COVID.
Sure.
Uh, but there are plenty of businesses that weren't good to have during COVID. So anyway, that's how I arrived there. But some people thought I was joking when I announced I was closing the store and I said that's what I was going to do. Uh, but I partly put it out there. Like, I don't know how it went for you, but like, I partly put it out there to try to stop all the conversations of like,
Oh god, yeah.
oh, you should open up a coffee shop in here. And like at
Yeah.
the frame of mind I was in, I didn't want to hear all of everybody's great ideas
Sure.
of ways I could save my video store. I was like,
Oh,
I'm
it's so
closing this
hard.
shit.
Yeah.
I don't care what, like, I'm not, like, I thought about trying to turn it into a nonprofit like Scarecrow Video did. And
I tried that
I was,
too.
yeah, I
Yeah.
was like, the board would probably fire me in the first 6 months,
Yes.
because I'd be like, I'm not doing that, I'm not doing what you say I should do.
Yeah, serve alcohol, serve, can you maybe you
Yeah,
could deliver, across town, and I entertained all that stuff, but at a certain point,
yeah,
you had to be like, I did it 22 years. That's like the majority, that's like half my life at this point. I think I'm done. I served.
yeah.
I
You
did
sound
it.
like you sound like you're. I mean, I was burnt out too, but
Yeah.
you really sound like you were burnt out to me. Not trying to psychoanalyze you, but
No, if business had been good, I would still be doing it because it was really fun. But it's like, it's weird. Even when I was in Guided by Voices, right? There was a period where before Bob decided to wrap it up, there were less people coming to see Guided by Voices for like a 6-month period. Like we go out back out to play, and it was a weird feeling. It didn't feel good to just be
yeah,
like, oh, there's less people here than we did last time, and it felt that way in the store where it was just like,
yeah,
it's like, time has moved on, and I'm so lucky that I got to do this as long as I did on a whim. Somebody who had no business knowledge, a knucklehead like me, did something for over 2 decades, had employees, made a good living, got to see all these things like you did that I was obsessed with. It was enough, but I just
yeah, yeah,
didn't want to have to um just convince myself that, yeah, you should still be in it, and you can make it work. It was like, it's this is beyond me at this point.
Yeah, there was a store here, and I'm not here trying to badmouth them or anything, but I will say things that could be construed as negative, but they're just facts. So there was a longtime record store here called Ear Ecstasy. Well, he closed, but it was not what I took notes from how he closed. Like by the end of it, the doors were chained shut because
Oh,
he
wow.
owed so much in taxes and
Right.
stuff like that. It was not done in the way I would have done it. So I took notes from that. So kind of like you, I was like, nothing lasts forever. Let's end this on a good note where I don't like owe a bunch of people money and like
Yes.
just quit while we're ahead kind of thing, I guess,
Yeah.
So but it's tough to make that decision.
Yeah.
One thing I thought about that made me feel a little better was I was like, okay, Todd, how many of the businesses that you loved when you were young are still around? And the answer was
Totally.
zero.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I was like, this is the way of things, like
Yeah.
this is how it goes. Nothing lasts forever. So you're not special in that way. And so anyway, I'm like you. I made sense in my own head. Now my kids were sad. That was kind of rough to tell your little kids that you had to shut it down. But it wouldn't have done them any favors if I'd run it into the ground and gone bankrupt. So
Exactly. And it was really
yeah,
the sale. I know you had a sale. I saw some footage of like Spider-Man walking around your store trying to buy
yeah,
stuff,
yeah,
and you had concerts and things like that. It sounded like, you tried to do a celebration, right? But it was really exciting to have a sale, and like people were leaving with giant, like, I'm talking about like the large size garbage bags full of
yeah, yeah,
VHS tapes and DVDs. And it was kind of incredible to see people be like, I want your store in my house.
yeah. It was fascinating to me that, and I guess you could say touching, but like I mean, it helped, it worked out. Like somebody would pay 20, like we did this. Actually, I think my friend in Asheville was the one who told me how to do this because he had owned two stores at one point and then he changed to just one. But like you start at a certain price, then when the sales for that day dip below a certain level, you lower the
Okay.
price, which I'm not trying to get into all these details, but the point is like people would pay $20 for something that they could have gone on eBay and bought for $3, but
Right.
they wanted our copy of it. You know
Yes.
what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like people were lined up to, and it worked. It was averages. Like
Yeah.
it was up to them to decide: do I want to get this now before somebody else gets it,
Right.
or do I want to? Like we explained it all. Do I want to wait and see
Right.
if I can get it for half of that or whatever? But part of me was like, damn, I can't believe people are paying these prices for this stuff,
Yeah.
but they wanted that copy, I think,
Yeah. It was funny. People ask all the time, they just assume that I went home with the store. And, I donated a bunch to Portland State University. I donated the queer films to Q Center. I just tried to, spread it around where it was needed.
yeah, yeah,
And I just took two cardboard boxes of things that meant the world to me, because I just knew if I got three, then that meant seven, which meant 14, which meant I
yeah,
had, and
yeah,
it was kind of really freeing. But it's kind of led me into obviously doing this podcast about music documentaries and music films, because I miss talking to my customers. I really do.
yeah, yeah. I'm glad you found an outlet. That's a
Yeah.
cool idea.
Thanks.
I told a friend of mine, I was like, I'm going to spend the whole interview saying, you remember that time you were in Guided by Voices? That was cool. Like Chris Farley or whatever. So I've done a really good job of not even really
were
talking about that.
Were you at
But
the
but
show in Louisville where Bob would not stop talking?
if you played with him, no, I was
Okay.
not. So I became a fan right around the time that he was shutting it down. Like it was like, I knew of the band, but probably most of, yeah, probably most of the Glory, the
Yeah.
original
Yeah. Yeah.
OG GBV years, I was listening to like country music
Sure.
and blues, and I was all about roots music from
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
past. So I pretty much ignored everything new. Now I just listen to death metal, so go figure. But I tend to go in like chunks. But I had a ticket to see the show in Bloomington. But I believe I had just had my second kid, who, by the way, is a big Guided by Voices
Was
fan.
that Birdland or something like that? Bird, like Bluebird or
Maybe the Bluebird.
yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Right.
But I couldn't swing it
Yeah.
because I mean I'm pretty sure he was like an infant, and I really wanted to
Sure.
go, but I was like, I'm licked,
Yeah.
I can't
Totally.
go. Like it's a couple hours away. So point being, I did not see Guided by Voices live until the first reunion tour.
Right. That was great.
Uh, yeah, and have since probably seen, I don't know, more than 10 shows,
Yeah.
like pretty fair amount. But so I missed the first go round.
Yeah. It was wild because I was in it for like 3 years when he's wrapping it up, and then we did all those Boston Spaceship records together and takeovers and things. And but yeah, I was excited for when he was reforming the Guided by Voices thing because the name branding just meant something. Like people Guided by Voices, it just
Sure,
meant
sure.
something. And also, so many people never got to see the original lineup, and I was
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
yeah, totally. I mean, I saw them once, and it was the first time I ever saw them. I was the person who had Alien Lanes, but didn't. I couldn't crack it. I loved lo-fi music, but I was also like, this is getting obscene. Like, I love the Grifters, I love Sebado, I love all this stuff, but like, I don't really get this Alien Lanes record. And then I went and saw them at South by Southwest, and I was like, oh my God, they're a rock band that records on 4-track because no one in Dayton understands what they're doing and won't give them studio time.
Yeah,
It was
yeah,
like, I was like,
yeah,
oh my God. And then every song, I was like, I know this song. I know this song. I know this song just from like kind of casually listening. And then after that point, because I wasn't playing music anymore at that point, I just became obsessed with. They were like my band. And then Bob
yeah,
said if
yeah.
somebody would leave, I get to be in it. And so yeah, it was great. Yeah,
Wow,
yeah,
that's pretty sweet.
yeah,
No, I was not at that show. I mean, he always comes up with something funny to riff on. Um, and I was reading a book about the Jockey Club, the bar I was mentioning that was in Newport, Kentucky.
yeah.
And I'm pretty sure there's an anecdote in there about him and somebody else getting kicked out of a Squirrel Bait concert.
Yes, it was him. It was him and Jimmy, his brother.
Okay,
Totally.
like they're heckling Squirrel Bait so much, like to get ejected from that place, you really had to be obnoxious, I assume.
It's so funny. I mean, you have to think that no one knew Bob's music till 1994, but he'd been making music since 83 and putting out records, right?
Yeah,
So I
yeah,
was on Sub Pop in 1990, and he's like, I had your record. And he had Squirrel. He just, it was frustrating for him, right? He was he
I
was a,
get
he
it.
was a
Yeah, yeah,
fan and obsessed and collecting all this, but I can imagine him also just showing up at a Squirrel Bait show and seeing children and being like,
yeah,
fuck this, like
yeah, yeah.
they get to
I
do
mean,
this.
it doesn't upset me at all. I just think it's funny.
It is funny.
Uh, Me and so this might be a good story. Uh, Me and my youngest son went to Austin because he has a friend who lives there, and my best man lives there, who also is the guy that recorded the first Palace Brothers record.
Okay.
And we all went to see Guided by Voices at the Mohawk, uh, which was kind of funny because me and my friend were fine after the 2.5 hour concert, but my son and his buddy were like dying. They were like, my back's killing me, my feet are killing me. I was like, y'all got to work on your concert stamina,
Yes.
like they were singing the blues, like 19 years old.
Oh,
I just thought it was funny.
oh, that's amazing.
I mean, they haven't spent decades standing at concerts, you know.
Right.
So anyway, they wanted to go. Me and my buddy, we were out front. The kids wanted to go in to get a T-shirt, so we were standing there waiting for them. And all of a sudden, the band comes walking by, and Bob was pretty out of it, seemed exhausted,
Yeah.
and he'd had a few beers. And we're standing there, and we didn't like yell out to him like some people were, like, "Hey, Bob," whatever. We're just standing there minding our own business, and he just like fell into us, giving us this hug. And he didn't even look at us really. He just kind of fell on us and
Yes.
like gave us this hug and then stood up and then just kept walking down the sidewalk.
Yeah.
And then when my son came out, I was like, you wouldn't believe what just happened.
Yeah.
Anyway, it was pretty funny because we weren't like trying to get him to talk to us or anything. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. I think that fall that you're talking about is the reason why so many people become fans too. They're just
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
oh my God. Yeah. That was an amazing time. But again, like the video store, I was like, I served, I did my time.
Yeah.
And then it
Yeah.
was like I told my daughter, I said, anytime you want to see your dad inebriated, you can watch our Austin City Limits performance anytime you want. And you will get
There you go.
like a nice 2.5 hour period of like up and down. And yeah, it's wild. Todd, thank you so much for coming on the show. It was so good to talk to you as fellow video store spirit. Do you know that I can think of one other musician that also had a video store, and it was the drummer in Jawbreaker. Supposedly had a store in San Francisco too. So I feel like I play guitar, you play bass, he plays drums, and we just go out and
Wow.
we just do
Yeah.
songs from the VHS era of like
I
Ray Dennis
mean, there's
Steckler.
there's worse ideas,
I know.
Yeah. Yeah.
um,
Um, yeah, it's been fun to I don't know, I hope we can talk again sometime. Like it's
absolutely.
been fun. It's been fun to I don't get super nostalgic about the video store, but there aren't that many. I mean, it's not like we're in combat or something, but like, there aren't that many people who really know what it's all like, you know what I
Yeah.
mean? So it's fun to talk to somebody about it.
Oh, we will talk again. But that's why
Yeah.
the final question, which I always ask, it's always the same, but I tailor it depending on what we're talking about. So on a scale from 1 to 97, how many old school VHS rewinders do you give your time having the Wild and Woolly video store, with 1 being the lowest and 97 VHS rewinders being the highest?
Now, at first, I thought you were starting to ask me like how many VHS rewinders did I go through, and I was going to be like, shit, if I know, like probably 5. I don't know.
Right, right.
I mean, it'd be hard to say it was all great because I'm sure like you had like I don't know how many truly like kind of off people you had in your store, but we had a few. Like I had to fire a few customers, and there were people who would wear you out, for sure. Bless their hearts or whatever. But yeah, overall, it was a very good experience. I'm going to say like a 90. How's that? Does that seem pretty high?
That's
No.
exactly what I had, 90. It's
All
the
right.
right
All right.
answer. That is
All right.
exactly what I had. My experience, I would say the same thing. It was
Yeah.
brilliant. It definitely shaped me, and I was so proud of it. And it was just shocking to have something as simple in my head as a video store touch people. I found that really
Yeah.
lovely.
Actually, here I have a point to make that we haven't talked about,
Mhm.
if you don't mind.
No.
One of the things I don't know, I've never been to Portland. I've been to Seattle once. That's it. But like I don't know your demographics exactly. But one of the things I really appreciated about my store and that I thought was actually kind of beautiful, I guess I'll say, was we would get all kinds of people in there.
Yes.
And I really liked that. Like now, I'm not complaining. And I knew this when I got into what I'm doing now. Like it's a certain demographic that can afford to do what I'm doing, very personalized exercise. So I'm not dealing with all people anymore. But I did really get a kick out of like, somebody renting a kung fu movie because they saw it at the local theater. Like in Louisville, 4th Street used to be like a real hopping place with like it was our version of like Times Square or
Okay.
something,
Okay.
that I mean, I never went, but like because I grew up in the burbs, but like in the 70s, it'd be the same movies playing there that would have been at
Wow.
Times Square,
Okay.
like kung fu movies, horror movies,
Right.
black exploitation movies. So you'd have somebody wanting to go down that memory lane, and then you'd have somebody else written a highbrow foreign film. And like I just really enjoyed like all kinds of people were in this one place and they
Absolutely.
all were getting along. I mean, not that they'd have reason to not get along, but you know what I mean? Like it was kind of cool that literally people from all walks of life were, it was almost like the public library, except
Totally.
I don't think a lot of people that have a lot of money go to the public library, but you get my point. Like
Absolutely. I had the
that was
same
something
thing. I
I
was
really enjoyed.
I was just super glad that I just wasn't a hipster video store. That it was
Yeah, yeah,
like the people who knew their shit and were like, "Do you have Whitey by Fassbender?" Yes. But I could also just be like, I just liked turning people on this stuff. It was hard. It was hard to make suggestions because often you can't win. You know what I mean? It's really
yeah,
hard. Like when
yeah.
someone's like, "What do you think is funny?" And you're like, "I don't know. What do you think is funny?" Because I what I'm gonna show you something that you're gonna be like, "That wasn't funny at all." And the same thing with horror
Yeah,
films.
yeah.
That was not scary enough. It was too scary. It was too gory. It wasn't gory enough. It was too dumb. But I have the same experience as you. I really enjoyed just that. It was just people coming in to love this thing, and it wasn't necessarily like film scholars. You know what I mean? And I and I
I
love
couldn't
that.
have stood it if it was film scholars.
Yes.
Like, yeah, like I mean, we got some of those, but
Oh, we do.
I'm not. I'm not much of a. I mean, I'm as my dad used to say. I consider myself semi-intelligent, but like I'm not a highbrow kind of guy.
Yeah,
Like
me
if you
either.
start talking about literature and real highbrow films, I got nothing to
That's
offer at
right.
all.
No.
Uh, but actually, something you said, I got to tell you this story. And I don't know if I'm going to be able to remember the movie title correctly, but there was a really artfully done documentary about the guy, Mr. Hand, who died from having sex with the horse. Do you remember that
Yes, that
documentary?
was
It
called.
was
It's one
it was
word.
just one word.
Oh my
Yeah,
God.
Jinx.
And I see the cover. I can almost
Yeah,
tell you it was like Kino Lorber films or something like that. But yeah,
yeah,
it'll come to
yeah.
me. It'll come to me. Anyway.
Yeah. Well, we used to have stickers on our movies that would say Todd likes this one, Chris likes this one. And actually, there's a local paper here where one of my ex-employees has a column called Tracy likes this one. So it kind of lives on. You've looked it up a bit, haven't you?
Zoo.
Yeah, yeah. So anyway, I had my sticker on that movie, and this guy came back and he's just like, I'm never renting another movie that has your sticker on it again. Uh, and I was like, what are you gonna do?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah. No.
I get it. I get it. But it is a really well done movie.
Yes, exactly.
Not maybe not for everybody.
Yeah, exactly.
But
It's not a Sunday night family film. So
I mean, in its own way, I found it very interesting.
absolutely. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. But anyway, yeah, that's me saying yes. Recommendations are difficult for sure.
Todd,
Yeah.
it was really nice to meet you. Thank you so much for coming
You
on.
too. I hope if we could just, I'm not saying next week, but I'd just love to talk to you again sometime, whether it's
Absolutely.
being recorded or not.
Yeah, no, I love it. We will. Thanks again, Todd.
You're welcome. I appreciate it.
Thank you for listening to Revolutions Per Movie. We release new episodes every Thursday on your favorite podcast app and additional bonus episodes every Sunday on our Patreon. The show is a completely independent affair, so the best way to support the show is through our Patreon at patreon.com/revolutionspermovie, where you can get weekly bonus episodes and shows, exclusive limited edition flexi discs and records and CDs featuring guests that have appeared on the show, and other exclusive goods sent to you just for joining. You can follow us on social media at Revolutions Per Movie, and also find out more information about our various guests in the episode show notes. Thanks again, and we'll see you next week. Bye!